Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Mr. Gamesman. Hello everybody and welcome to TBoD Extra Points, or TBoD EXP as we're calling this. This is a kind of new thing we're trying over at the TBoD Towers. Essentially the idea behind this is Eremenko and myself are going to do single discussion points around about 15-20 minutes long. Hopefully we have stuff to say for 15 or 20 minutes, but we're going to do them fairly regularly. They'll go out in video format if you're watching youtube.com/Teabag or die. If you're not, of course, that's where you would go. Otherwise, if you want to hear them audio-wise, you can just check us out on iTunes at Teabag or die there too. So yes, this is something we're going to trial out. We thought it'd be nice to give some more kind of bite-sized content. They're quite easy to knock up. It means we get to give some content out there. We get to have a good bit of discussion about something gaming related. And it kind of supplements the time between the kind of special casts that we're brewing up. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing today. And the first topic for our very first TBoD EXP is a kind of getting to know you question. Specifically, getting to know the lovely Eremenko sat to my right or left, depending on how you're watching this. I don't know if it's mirroring our image on the screen.
We've taken the green screen down today. We don't need that overlay ourselves over a video game this time.
Exactly. We've just decided to put some very fine, priceless art behind us, just from, our private collections. These weren't bought on the company card. But of course, you won't know what we're talking about if you're listening on the audio file, in which case I will describe every painting right now.
One by one. This is how we fill our 15 minutes.
No, of course I'm not going to describe every painting because we've got a lot more to talk about. Today, as I say, I've got a get to know you question for Eremenko. It's been highly publicised on our podcasts over the years. That Eremenko is very much an RPG fan. Would you say that that's correct?
Yeah, I would say that's fairly accurate. RPG, as in the video game RPG, not so much the tabletop one. Just because I never have a chance to play it, because none of my friends are as nerdy as me in that respect.
Fair enough. I would say that the only RPG I'm a fan of is the missile launcher in Battlefield. So yes.
You stole the only joke that I had for this conversation.
Oh shit, okay. Sorry mate, we should have discussed this beforehand. But anyway, my question to you is, what is your favourite, and I guess that means in terms, what is your best RPG? So what's your favourite RPG you've ever played?
Well, you've asked me this, you've told me that you were going to ask me this earlier in the week, and obviously spent a lot of time thinking about it since. And
good. I didn't want to catch you on the fly because I know you've played a lot of these games. So.
Well, that's it though. But the more I think about it, the harder a question it becomes to answer, because every time I think about it, I remember another RPG that I played and loved. And it's such a broad category RPG. You've got so many different types of games encompassed in that. So you've got your traditional turn-based JRPGs, which obviously I'm a massive fan of, stuff like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and all that kind of stuff, Wild Arms, to name just a few that I've played. But then you've got your more action adventure RPGs like Skyrim, and Legend of Zelda falls into that category as well. So it's hard to decide whether you want to be a purist about it or if you want to go down a more sort of open interpretation of RPG route. So, Mass Effect, even Mass Effect's an RPG.
Certainly, a Western RPG. Yeah, I mean, get granular on it because you know your stuff when it comes to this. I am trying for us desperately to buck the TBoD trend of sitting on the fence. So.
Yeah. I'm going to come down and I will name an RPG at the end of this video,
yes.
But...
Or maybe we'll
make it to sort of
cliffhanger for just 30 seconds of the second video.
Just before I name it, I just wanted to sort of start talking about my thought process when you asked me this question. So, you can see on the table in front of us, we've got Sephiroth and Sora, two characters from two of my favourite RPGs of all time, obviously Final Fantasy VII and Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts being probably fallen more into the Legend of Zelda category of a quicker paced, action-based RPG. And yeah, so I think personally, I've always considered RPGs to be more in the sort of the first category, you know, the JRPG, that turn-based strategy game, not strategy as such, but turn-based combat in an RPG. So exploring is probably a very important factor. Storyline's a very important factor, and the combat system is a very important factor. In terms of scope and worlds and stuff like that, you look at something like Dragon Age. I've just started playing Inquisition recently, and you know the amount of effort and time that studios have poured into creating these believable universes, believable worlds, and places and situations in games like that is just absolutely outstanding. So, like the lore of Skyrim, me and Cutmaster C were talking about this the other day. Bethesda's lore masters are just unbelievable. They actually hire a team of people who are there to create the lore and to ensure that any books and, you know, documents and stuff that you find in any of the Elder Scrolls games and any of the Fallout games don't contradict one another.
Sure.
So, you know,
I know there's a Star Wars. Sorry, there's a Star Wars lore master. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I forget his name now, but a guy who's just written the script for the Star Wars standalone movie, the one after Episode 7.
Oh, okay. Is that the Boba Fett or the Han Solo one? Because they were doing one of each, weren't they?
They haven't named what it's about at all.
Oh, really? Cool.
But yeah, he was saying that there is a Star Wars lore master who is the go-to guy who knows everything about Star Wars.
Do you reckon he's just like a little Yoda, wizened old man sitting in a room somewhere, like just never allowed out, so his skin's gone sort of translucently green?
Maybe, yeah.
And like hasn't been able to trim his ear hair and stuff. He
possibly shoots lightning from his fingers, but that's not been corroborated. But, yeah.
You've overwritten some lore and just blasts,
exactly.
melts
just
people down.
Force choking people who've, written Jar Jar Binks into...
It's actually being kept alive inside like a black suit thing, you know, and he's got a mecha arm and stuff.
I'm pretty sure that he was the guy who... Obviously, you know, they cut all of the kind of fan fiction out of the canon.
Oh, yeah.
I think he literally went round and murdered all of the writers just so they didn't come up with anything else.
That makes sense.
But anyway, back to Lore Masters. You were saying, yeah, Skyrim has a really kind of dense and well manicured lore. It
does, and I always I get the feeling from, and it really makes a difference for me, because the Fallout and Skyrim, I will find a book in Skyrim and I will sit and I will read that book at that moment. You know, I can be in the middle of a dungeon like chasing after a boss or whatever, and I'm just like, ooh, a book. Sit and read it and flick through every page and read every single word. Whereas in something like Dragon Age or Mass Effect, for some reason, this is why we were talking about it, because Cutmaster C came in, I was playing Inquisition, and I mentioned that I don't feel as involved in the lore in that game as I do in the Skyrims and Oblivions and stuff like that. And I don't know if it's just a personal taste thing, or if it's the way that it's presented, or if it is in fact because they have this team of lore masters who create such a brilliantly interwoven story. I've never been able to put my finger on what it is, but those games really draw me in that sense. But what I think what I appreciate more in an RPG is exploring a fantastical and varied world. So for that reason, something like Skyrim or Oblivion isn't going to make it as my top RPG, because I don't think that the landscapes and environments are really varied enough. Mm-hmm. If Elder Scrolls Online had had this world that had been created, and it was an entire world rather than just the set environments from the originals, then maybe it would have won out, because that feeling of exploration that you get in other games is just something else to behold. So going through it's the old school world maps on the Final Fantasy games, and Dragon Quest, and a lot, obviously, that they're all Squaresoft games, and getting onto that world map and moving around and seeing this entire world unfold in front of you is just a completely unrivaled experience for me. And the same with things like, it's not a world map based, but Grandia, which was an old PS1 and Dreamcast game, I think, and then Grandia 2 as well. That created a world that fitted together even better than using the world map technique, which, modern Final Fantasies have tried to do and kind of failed. So Final Fantasy 12 and Final Fantasy 13, even back to Final Fantasy 10, you didn't have a world map. Like, all of the areas were just interlinked, and you travelled through, well, pretty linear corridors to get from place to place.
Okay.
And that made that sort of choked the exploration element of it a little bit. Whereas when you went on the world map, you didn't even know where you're supposed to go. It was just like, I think there's somewhere to the southeast, and it was like, what? The southeast massive, like, this is an entire planet that I'm on here.
Yeah.
And that gave you that sort of feeling of freedom that you kind of get in Skyrim Oblivion, but to a lesser extent,
Sure.
because you're trapped within the boundaries of those districts. But see, even Final Fantasy still doesn't win out, because there is one more RPG that stole my heart. And
Sorry, Final Fantasy doesn't win.
Final Fantasy doesn't win.
Wow, shocker. You heard it here first,
I
everybody.
know. You see, I've been saving that curveball, and I've mentioned Final Fantasy loads of times just to sort of throw you off
Yeah,
track.
I like that. I would have guessed Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
before
well,
this
there you go.
conversation happened.
But there's one RPG for me that takes all of those elements that I love about RPGs and creates the most immersive world that you could ever possibly go into. So, it's got fantastic lore, which is 20, 30 years old or something. It's got amazing landscapes, excellent exploration, such a variation of experiences that you just don't get anywhere else. And it's not your standard RPG. It's kind of turn-based combat, but you get to do it with your friends.
Okay, I see where you're going. So what would be your favourite RPG then?
It's not just that it's my favourite. I think this game is arguably the best RPG representation ever made, and it's World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it's probably the only RPG I've ever played for any considerable amount of time.
Yeah, but see, the fact that it can even draw someone like you in, it's that classic fantasy feeling with a twist. Every environment has a unique feeling to it, and just exploring and trying to climb to the highest point is a thrill in of itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, World of Warcraft. So, little curveball for you all there, because I hadn't mentioned MMOs at all until that point. But yeah, it's definitely the best RPG that I've ever played.
Brilliant, fantastic. Well, that was a good little talk. Actually, I enjoyed that. You give me quite a bit of a history lesson there as well. I like that.
I could have gone more in depth with the history lesson, but
we literally would have been here all day. These would just turn all into special casts, 2 hours long, and next thing you know,
just me talking about RPGs.
Yeah, literally, I could just have left the room at this stage. But no, thank you very much for answering that question.
My pleasure.
And thank you very much for listening / watching, everybody. We will throw this question out to the listener / viewership. What is your favourite RPG? And let us know why. We'll try and bring it up on one of our proper casts when that happens. But yes, thank you very much for consuming this first episode of TBoD EXP. And we will see you soon for another one. Goodbye.
Ding.